The twin suns of planet Varel hung low in the sky, burning the dusty streets orange and gold. Most humans had already packed up their market stalls for the day, but one man stayed behind, wiping down the counter of his food cart. His name was Jacob. An ex-soldier turned cook, he lived alone and liked it that way. He sold cheap, warm meals outside the city walls, just enough to survive, never too much to be noticed. But today, someone was watching him. Jacob felt it first. A small shadow. A strange stillness. He turned and scanned the alley behind his cart. Nothing. Just a pile of broken crates and old boxes. Still, something didn't feel right. He went back to his cart, opened a container, and started packing leftover stew into a storage bowl. Then, a sound, a tiny scratch on metal. He turned fast, his eyes narrowed. There, behind a crate, two small eyes stared back at him, wide, shining, scared, not human. The eyes belonged to a little, alien girl, no more than 6 or 7 years old in human years. Her skin was pale lavender, thin and cracked in places from dryness. Her clothes were torn. She looked half-starved. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. Jacob slowly knelt. "Down, I see you," he said gently. "Don't be scared." The girl flinched. He held up a hand. "I won't hurt you." Then he did something unexpected. He pulled out a fresh piece of warm bread from his cart, still soft, still hot, and placed it on the ground. Then he backed away. The little alien girl stared at the bread for a long moment. Then, fast as lightning, she darted forward, grabbed it, and ran back behind the crate. Jacob smiled softly. She ate like a starving animal, like she hadn't had real food in days. "Poor
kid,"
Jacob muttered. He took a clean bowl, filled it with stew, and added a few vegetables. Then he walked over slowly and placed the bowl near her crate. This time, she didn't run. She just looked up at him. Their eyes met. Jacob smiled. "Eat. It's okay." The girl hesitated, then reached out slowly with shaking hands. She pulled the bowl into the shadows and began to eat quietly, carefully, like she couldn't believe it was real. Minutes passed. The sky darkened. The last traders left the area. Jacob stayed near his cart, not saying anything, just watching, just listening. Then, a sound behind him. Not small, not soft. Heavy footsteps. He turned. A tall figure stepped from the shadows, walking straight toward him. It was a woman, an alien. Same skin color as the girl, same glowing eyes. But this one was older, stronger, and armed. She wore a long, dark coat made of alien leather, and a long silver blade hung from her side. She stopped in front of Jacob's cart. Her voice was low, cold, firm. "You fed my daughter." Jacob blinked. "What?" "You gave her bread and stew." He nodded slowly. "Yeah." She looked hungry. The woman stepped closer, her eyes locked onto his. "Then by our ancestral right, I now belong to you." Silence. Jacob stared at her, like she had spoken a different language. I'm sorry. What did you say?" "My people have ancient laws," she said. "If a stranger feeds an orphaned child, the mother is bound to that stranger. You fed her. So now, I serve you." Jacob took a step back, hands up. "Hold on, I wasn't trying to—" "Intent does not matter," she said. "The right has been made." From behind the crate, the little girl peeked out, her eyes calmer now. She walked slowly toward her mother, holding the empty bowl in both hands. The woman didn't look at the child. She kept her eyes on Jacob. "My name is Solari. My bond is yours now." Jacob felt the weight of her words, and somehow, he knew she wasn't joking. Not a threat, not a trick, but a law. An ancient alien rule he had just walked into, by giving a child some food. He looked down at the little girl again, then back at the woman, and all he could say was, "What happens now?" Jacob didn't sleep that night. He sat on the edge of his bedroll inside his small shelter, staring at the two figures sleeping near the heater. The little alien girl was curled up in a blanket he had given her. Her mother, Solari, sat against the wall with her arms crossed, wide awake, eyes open, watching him, protecting something, or everything. He whispered across the room, "Do you ever blink?" Solari didn't smile. "Your world is not safe. Not for her. Not for me. And now, not for you." Jacob sighed and rubbed his forehead. This wasn't the life he wanted. He had left the war to be alone, to avoid trouble. But now, trouble had walked into his food stall, eaten his stew, and claimed his life by some alien law. He walked to the counter and poured himself some cold tea. "I didn't mean to claim you," he said. Solari looked at him sharply. "You fed my daughter. You gave her warmth. You accepted her without knowing her blood. That is enough in my people's eyes." Jacob shook his head. "But I'm not your people." "No," she replied softly. "But your kindness matched theirs. And kindness is stronger than blood." Her voice was soft now, honest. The little girl stirred under the blanket. She woke up, blinking slowly, and looked around the room. Jacob noticed how small she was, how thin. She sat up and looked at him shyly. Jacob waved. "Morning, kid." The girl smiled just a little and whispered, "Lima." Jacob tilted his head. "What's that? Your name?" Solari nodded. "It means small light in our tongue." Jacob smiled. "Fitting." He sat near her. "How long were you two running?" Solari answered without pause. "Since her father died." Jacob looked up. "The war?" Solari nodded. "He was a commander. His name was Karos. They hunted us after he died, said we carried information. We carried nothing. Only his child." She paused, then added, "I kept her alive through every zone. Through cold planets, acid storms, and empty cities. But I could not feed her anymore." She looked Jacob straight in the eyes. "And then, she smelled your stew." Jacob felt a lump in his throat. He remembered his time as a soldier. He had seen war-torn kids, starving ones, lost ones. He remembered walking away from them. Not because he wanted to, but because he couldn't help them. All but this time, he hadn't walked away. He had handed her a bowl, and now her mother was handing him her life. Jacob stood up. "Look, Solari, I'm just a guy selling food. I don't know alien rights. I don't need a protector." Solari stood slowly, like a mountain unfolding. "I am not a servant. I am a bondmate by right. I protect your name, your blood, your child if you have one, until I repay the balance." Jacob blinked. "That's heavy." She took a step closer. "You gave us a night of safety. Now, I give you my blade, my oath, and my breath." She removed the curved silver dagger from her belt and laid it at his feet. "If danger comes, I bleed before you." Jacob stared at the blade, then at her. He wanted to say no. He wanted to tell her to take her daughter and leave. But when he looked at Lima, smiling faintly as she hugged the warm blanket, he couldn't. He picked up the blade, handed it back to Solari and said, "I don't want your blood, just your honesty." She looked at him with deep silver eyes. Then for the first time, she nodded. "That I can give freely." Suddenly, a knock at the door. Both turned quickly. Jacob stepped back. Solari placed herself in front of her daughter, hand on her weapon. Another knock, loud, angry. Then a voice shouted through the metal. "Open up! This is Colony Patrol! You're hiding outsiders!" Jacob's heart stopped. He looked at Solari. She said nothing, but her body tensed. Lima crawled behind a crate, shaking. Jacob whispered, "Stay hidden." He stepped toward the door. Another knock, harder this time. The woman beside him whispered something he would never forget. "If they come for you, I kill first," and her eyes glowed like cold fire. The pounding at the metal door grew louder. Jacob's hand hovered near the latch. His breath came in short bursts. He could hear the boots outside. 3 men, maybe 4. Colony patrols, human voices. Final warning. Open this door, or we force it. Behind him, Solari stood like a wall of stone. Her curved blade rested calmly at her hip, but her eyes, silver and glowing, were locked on the door. "They won't ask again," she said softly. Jacob turned toward her. "If they find you, they'll arrest you both." "Then you must decide, human," she said. "Do I fight, or do you lie?" He looked back at Lima, the little alien girl peeking from behind a crate, her small fingers clutching a soft blanket. She didn't speak, but her wide, scared eyes said everything. Jacob took a deep breath and opened the door. 3 human patrolmen stood outside in dull gray armor. The one in front had a scanner in hand and a suspicious frown on his face. Locals saw movement, said a non-registered female and a child came in here. Jacob raised his eyebrows. "You think someone snuck into my shelter? You've smelled my cooking, right?" One of the patrolmen chuckled, but the leader wasn't amused. He pushed past Jacob and stepped inside. Solari had already disappeared behind a curtain. Jacob's heart raced. The patrolman walked around slowly, checking corners, peeking into cabinets. He didn't see the tiny footprints by the heater, didn't hear the quiet breathing under the crates. Just as he neared the curtain, Jacob moved fast. He dropped a large metal spoon loudly onto the floor. The clang echoed through the room. The patrolman turned. "You nervous, cook?" Jacob shrugged. "Only when people stomp into my house uninvited." The man grunted and walked back to the door. "Watch yourself," he said. "Aliens without permits aren't pets. If you're hiding one, you'll be treated like them." He stepped outside, then turned and added, "Next time, we won't knock." Jacob closed the door and leaned against it, heart pounding. The silence was heavy again. Then from behind the curtain, Solari stepped out. "You chose your side," she said. Jacob exhaled. "Yeah, I guess I did." She bowed her head once. "Then I give you more than my blade. I give you the rules of my people." She sat down on the floor, cross-legged. Jacob sat across from her. The little girl, Lima, crawled into her mother's lap, curling up quietly. Solari began speaking, soft and serious. "In my culture, when a stranger feeds one's child, it is called the Binding Act. It is sacred, older than stars. A mother who accepts it is bonded, not by law, but by spirit." Jacob asked, "What if she doesn't want to be bonded?" "She is hunted," Solari replied. "Our people believe no one should raise a child with dishonor. Abandoning a sacred bond is the same as war betrayal." Jacob frowned. "That's intense." Solari looked down at her daughter. "It is not just food you gave her. You gave her protection. Hope. That is more powerful than you know." Jacob leaned forward. "But what does that mean for you? You're stuck with me?" "Not stuck," she said softly. "Chosen. I could have left that night. I didn't. I stayed." Lima stirred and spoke for the first time in full human words. "You're my new father?" Jacob froze. He didn't know what to say, but the little girl smiled. A smile so warm and innocent it made his chest hurt. He placed his hand gently on her head. "I don't know what I am," he said, "but you're safe here. I promise." Solari reached out and placed her hand over his. Her skin glowed faintly, pulsing with golden light. "Then the promise is complete." That night, Jacob stood outside looking at the stars. The air was cold, but inside that little shelter, warmth waited, not from a heater, from family, and deep in the shadows of the city walls. Someone watched, eyes glowing, waiting. The next few Days passed quietly. Jacob's food cart reopened near the city's edge. He served stew to workers and traders, pretending everything was normal. But things were not normal. Not with Solari standing silently in the shadows, always watching. Not with Lima sitting nearby, drawing stars in the dirt, and not with Jacob's mind spinning every time he heard boots behind him. That evening, the streets emptied early. A storm was coming, not from the sky, but from the city's dark heart. Jacob finished serving his last customer. He packed his cart, wiped his hands, and turned toward the alley where Solari usually waited. But tonight, she wasn't there. "Solari?" he called. No answer. His eyes scanned the dim alley. Something felt wrong. Too quiet. Too still. Then, a scream. It was Lima. Jacob ran full speed toward the sound. He turned a corner and froze. 3 men in black armor had grabbed Solari. Her arms were locked behind her back with glowing cuffs. She struggled, but one of them hit her in the side with a shock rod. Lima screamed again, trapped in a corner, crying. "No!" Jacob shouted. The men turned. One of them grinned. "There's the human." Jacob stepped forward. "Let her go." The biggest one laughed. "Not a chance. She's got a bounty. Big one. And the kid? That's extra credit." Jacob's hands clenched. "She's not your target. She's under my protection." The man smirked. "Yeah? You gonna stop us with that stew spoon?" Then something changed. Jacob stepped forward again, this time with purpose. "I don't care about your credits," he said. "You touch her or that child again, I'll make sure none of you walk out of this alley." The leader raised his weapon. So be it. But he never got the chance to fire, because Solari moved. Fast. Deadly. She was playing weak. In a flash, she twisted her body and broke the cuffs. Her skin pulsed with silver light. The shock rod shattered in her hand. The nearest man didn't even see the blade coming. Her curved dagger flashed once. He dropped, unconscious. The others turned to run, but Solari leapt forward, her movements, like wind slicing through air. Jacob rushed to Lima and pulled her into his arms. "It's okay. You're safe." When he looked up again, the fight was over. The attackers lay groaning on the ground. One of them crawled backward, eyes wide. "She's a monster," he gasped. Jacob stood tall. "No, she's a mother." Solari walked over, breathing hard. Her blade dripped with light, not blood, just plasma. She stood before Jacob and bowed her head slightly. "I failed to stop them before they reached her. I will not fail again." Jacob looked down at the girl in his arms, then at Solari. "You didn't fail," he said. "You protected what matters." That night they sat together under the quiet sky. Lima was asleep, wrapped safely in a blanket between them. Jacob finally asked, "Will they come back?" Solari nodded. "They will not forget this loss. More will come." Jacob looked at her. "Then we fight together." She turned her head toward him. "You accept the bond fully?" He nodded. "I accept it. I protect you both now. Not because of your law, because I want to." Her eyes softened. Her light flickered gold. "Then I give you one more truth." She took off her glove and showed him a glowing mark on her palm. It looked like a broken star. "This is the mark of oath. In our culture, when given freely, it means forever." Jacob slowly reached out and touched it. Forever, then. Far above them, a drone hovered in silence, recording everything. Back in the city, someone watched the footage and smiled. Found her. The stars above were silent that night, but inside the small shelter, everything had changed. Solari stood by the small table, sharpening her blade with slow, careful hands. The room was quiet except for the soft scrape of metal. Jacob sat, across from her, watching her face, serious, focused, but calm now. Lima was asleep, hugging a small stuffed animal Jacob had traded for earlier that day. Her breathing was slow and safe. Jacob broke the silence. "You weren't always a fighter, were you?" Solari didn't look up. "No, I was a singer once. On my homeworld. That surprised him. Really? What changed? She finally looked at him. The war. My husband's death, my child's hunger. She lowered her blade. A mother doesn't get to choose peace when her child is in danger. Jacob stood and walked closer. You don't have to protect her alone anymore. Solari watched him. You say that easily. I mean it, he said. I didn't. Just feed your daughter. I care about her. About you. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she said quietly, On my world, bonding begins with a gift. A symbol freely given. Jacob tilted his head. What kind of symbol? She walked over to her bag and pulled out a thin silver thread, glowing, alive. This thread is spun from a starworm, rare, sacred. If I wrap it around your wrist, it means you are no longer a stranger. Jacob held out his hand. Solari wrapped the thread slowly around his wrist. It pulsed once like it felt his heartbeat, then faded into his skin like it had always belonged there. Jacob smiled. Now you're stuck with me, she replied softly. No. Now I've chosen you. They sat together near the heater. He poured her warm water. She accepted it with both hands, a sign of respect in her culture. Jacob looked at her closely. Why do you really stay with me? Is it just the law? Solari looked down into her cup. No. The law only explains the start, not the choice. Jacob leaned forward. So why? She looked at him, this time with no armor in her eyes. Because you didn't ask for anything in return. Not service, not loyalty, not my body, only safety, for a child who is not yours. Where I come from, that is rarer than gold. He reached out, gently placed his hand over hers. I didn't do it for a reward. She didn't pull away. I know, she whispered. That's why it matters. Suddenly, a soft sound came from the side. Lima. She had woken up and was watching them quietly. She rubbed her eyes and mumbled, Are we a family now? Jacob looked at Solari. Solari looked at Jacob, and for the first time they both smiled. Yes, Jacob said. We are. Lima crawled between them, laying her head in Solari's lap and holding Jacob's hand. They sat like that for a long time. 3 people. 1 bond. No more running, just belonging. But deep in the city's core, a tracking beacon pulsed, and a ship marked with red fangs and clan symbols started rising from the underbelly of the spaceport. They were coming, for the girl, for her mother, and now, for the human too. Morning broke with a strange silence. Jacob stood outside the shelter, a mug of weak coffee in his hand. The twin suns were still low, casting long shadows across the sand. He watched a trader's hoverbike pass slowly on the far road. Inside, Solari was braiding her daughter's hair. Lima giggled quietly, the sound of peace. But peace, Jacob knew, never lasted long on planet Varel, and today it shattered like glass. A loud hum cut through the air. Jacob looked up. A large silver ship hovered above the street. It was round, smooth and marked with a golden crest, not from the colony, alien. Solari stepped outside, holding Lima close. Her face changed. She whispered one word, cold and heavy. Council. Jacob tensed. What do they want? Me. And, what I chose. The ship landed. The air shimmered as its doors opened. 6 figures stepped out, all tall and glowing with authority. Robes of light, eyes like polished crystal. They moved in silence, surrounding the shelter. The lead elder, a woman with silver markings across her face, stepped forward. Solari of the Broken Moon Clan, she said. You are summoned. Solari stood straight. I do not answer the clan anymore. You defied the ancestral bond, the elder said. You joined with a human, broke sacred purity. That must be judged. Jacob stepped forward. She broke nothing. I fed her child. I accepted the bond. You punish love? The elder turned to him. Her voice was sharp, cold. Human, you do not speak our ways. You do not understand the weight of our law. Jacob didn't back down. Then teach me. But you don't get to tear apart a family just because it looks different to you. Lima hid behind Solari, frightened. Solari placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder and spoke clearly. I will not leave him. He is kind, he is brave, he is hers, and now mine. The elder raised her hand. Then you choose exile. No clan, no name, no return. Jacob's heart pounded. He whispered, You don't have to do this for me. Solari looked at him with warmth. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it with you. She reached into her cloak and pulled out her clan pendant. Glowing with ancestral light, she crushed it in her hand. Ash and sparks floated into the air. I choose him. I choose us. The other council members gasped. The elder stared for a long moment. Then she turned. So be it. You are no longer one of us. You belong to the outsider now. She looked at Jacob with something almost like pity. Take care of her, human. You carry a heavy fire now. And then they left. Silent. Cold. Gone. Solari stood still for a long time. Jacob stepped beside her. You okay? She looked at the empty sky. For the first time, yes. Later that night, they sat together outside the shelter. Lima was asleep in her room. Jacob broke the silence. What now? Solari looked at him, her voice soft. Now we're truly free. He chuckled. Feels scary. Freedom always is. Then she leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder. But it's better than being alone. Far away in the shadows. Another pair of eyes watched. Not council. Not hunters. Something worse. The last bounty hunter who hadn't given up, and he was getting closer. The night was darker than usual. Clouds covered both moons. The stars were hidden. Even the wind held its breath. Inside the small shelter, Jacob sat at the edge of the bed, tightening a makeshift bandage around his arm. A fresh cut. Nothing serious, but a reminder that danger still lurked. Across the room, Solari stood beside her sleeping daughter Lima, watching over her like a silent guardian. Jacob watched Solari. She had given up everything, her clan, her name, her future. For him, for this strange, fragile family they'd made together. And Jacob hadn't said the one thing that truly mattered. Yet, he stood up quietly and walked over to her. She sleeps better now, he whispered. Solari nodded. She no longer dreams of running. Jacob hesitated, then said softly, But I still do. I keep thinking someone else will come. They will, she said. But this time, we stand. He looked into her silver eyes. That's the thing, Solari. You stood for me. You chose me. You crushed your pendant. You gave everything. And I would do it again. Jacob swallowed hard. His voice trembled. Then let me choose you. The way I know how. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a small handmade bracelet, woven from old ship wire and copper thread, rough but real. He gently took her hand and slid it around her wrist. In my culture, we don't have oaths and glows. We have symbols, promises, worn by choice. Solari looked at the bracelet, then at him. Jacob smiled. I choose you too, Solari. Not because of a rule, not because of a right, but because I want to wake up with you, protect you, raise her together. For a long moment, Solari said nothing. Then, her eyes shimmered, not with power, but with something far stronger. Tears. She stepped closer, placed her hand on his chest. Then we are bound. By your way, and mine. And no power will break it. Suddenly, A crash. The shelter's back wall exploded inward. Jacob jumped in front of Salari. Lima screamed, smoke, sparks. And from the dust stepped a figure, tall, armored in black, glowing red eyes under a battle helm. "Found you," the bounty hunter hissed. Jacob pushed Salari toward Lima. "Take her, I'll hold him." But Salari didn't move. "No," she said. "We hold him." They stood side by side, Jacob holding a shock rod, Salari with her silver blade. The bounty hunter lunged, but Jacob struck first, swinging wide, forcing the attacker back. Salari moved like wind and light, slicing the air with precision. The fight was fast, fierce, but together, they were stronger. The bounty hunter fell, defeated. Smoke filled the room. Lima peeked out from her hiding place. "Is it over?" Jacob fell to his knees, breathing hard. "Yeah, kid, it's over." Salari knelt beside him. She helped him up, pressed her forehead to his. "You chose me," she whispered, "even when the storm came." Jacob smiled, blood on his lip. "You chose me first." They stood together in the broken shelter. Around them was rubble, but between them was something. Unshakable, not fear, not duty, love. The next morning they began to rebuild. Together. Not as human and alien, but as a family. One no council could judge. One no bounty could break. Bound not by accident, but by choice.